Hi, I'm Megan, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make granny squares. Granny squares are a super popular and beginner-friendly crochet project. They can be sewn together to make everything from blankets to apparel to accessories. A quick Google or Pinterest search will leave you with dozens of ideas for a granny square project. But before you can make that sweater or bag you have your eye on, you'll need to know how to make a granny square. So today I'm going to share with you a basic granny square tutorial. The supplies that you'll need for this project are your yarn of choice. So today I am using Lion's brand basic stitch yarn. You will also need a coordinating hook. To determine what size hook you'll need, simply look on the back of your yarn label and it will tell you the hook size recommended for the yarn. So today I am using a 5mm hook. You'll also need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle for weaving in your ends. Today's project we're going to be using the chain stitch, the slip stitch, and the double crochet. Okay, first round, we are going to make a loop and get our hook on our loop, and we are going to chain 4. Then we're going to slip stitch into the first chain space to form a loop. Now if you wanted, you could do a magic circle. I don't like magic circles, so I'm not using one. But from here, we got our circle. We are going to chain 2. This chain 2 is actually going to count as a double crochet. And then into that loop we created, we are going to double crochet 2 times. And this counts as our first cluster of 3 double crochets. Next, we're going to chain 2 to form a space between our next cluster of 3 double crochets. So double crochet 3. Right there's that space I created with the chain 2. So we're going to chain 2 again and then do 3 double crochets. All of these double crochets are being worked into the center circle, and as I'm working my stitches, I'm trying to crochet over my tail so I don't have to weave that in later. Chain 2 and 3 more double crochets. Okay, and here we are towards the end of our first round. So first we are going to chain 2, and what we're going to do is join this by slip stitching into the top of that chain 2 that we made at the beginning of our round. And then we're actually going to slip stitch one more time into the first double crochet of the round to help get a nice even finish. So there we go. First round is complete. Before I move on to our second round, I want to talk about how to avoid a tilting granny square. This granny square is tilted. If I turn it to the side here like this, you'll notice that it just looks uneven. It almost looks like it's spiraling. Each round is spiraling a little bit in the same direction. It just doesn't look perfectly straight. And there's 2 ways that you can avoid this. The first way is to start each new round in the opposite corner of the previous round. And the second thing that you can do is turn your work each round. So for example, the even rounds will be worked with the wrong side up, and the odd rounds will be worked with the right side up. All right, let's move on to the second round. So I'm just gonna turn my first round here so I start in this opposite corner. And I'm going in with this pretty yellow color, and I'm going to get my yarn slip stitched onto my work, and then we are going to chain 2. Again, this counts as your first double crochet, and then we are going to do 2 double crochets. And what we're doing here is making our first corner. So we are going to chain 2 and then do 3 double crochets. So here is our first corner. And the first corner of each round is always going to be worked the same way. You're going to start in the opposite corner of the previous round, chain 2, then do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. The rest of the corners are going to be worked the same way. It'll be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So now we are going to move on to that second corner. We're just moving right over, and we are going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. And there you go. We have our first and second corners here, and you'll see that we're starting to form a side, and we're going to move on and do our third and fourth corners. And then again, when we get back over here to where we started, we are going to slip stitch into the top of that original chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch again into the first double crochet that we made. Pull up and cut our yarn. And then I have some tails hanging out here. I usually like to weave my ends in as I go. So I'm just going to take a minute to quick weave over some of these ends. Okay, moving on to our third round, going in with this pretty orange. And I'm turning my square, so I start in my opposite corner. And just like the previous round, I'm starting my first corner, chain 2, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. So our first corner is done, but here we are at our first space between clusters on a side. This is not a corner, this gets worked differently. So we are going to crochet a cluster of 3 double crochet stitches into each space created between the clusters of the previous round. So we're going to do 3 double crochets into that space. And here's what this looks like. Now, I did not put any chain stitches between my corner and my first cluster of 3 double crochets here. And that's because the fewer chain stitches between each cluster of the double crochet stitches and each corner stitch, the tighter the granny square will be. So for example, I have 3 granny squares here. This first one has no chain stitches between clusters. This middle one has 1 chain stitch between each cluster, and this last one has 2 chain stitches between each cluster. I personally like the look of a granny square with no chain stitches between clusters. I think it's a nice, tidier granny square. So I do not place chain stitches between each cluster. Okay, we're back to a corner. So 3 double crochets, 2 chain stitches, and 3 double crochets. And now you'll see that we really have a side going on here. So I'm just going to keep working all the way around. Now, something that you can do is, like I said, weave in your ends as you go. So right here, I'm just going to weave in this yellow tail a little bit so I can crochet over that when I get to this corner. So you'll see that I just crocheted the entire corner over this yellow tail, and I'm gonna trim that up and then just keep going with my work. And then when we get to the end here, we join our round just like we did in our previous rounds, slip stitching into the top of the first chain 2 and then again in the first double crochet. Fourth round, we're going in with this pretty red, starting our new round in the opposite corner of the previous round, and we are just following that pattern. The first corner is worked, chain 2, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. No chain stitches between clusters. Each space is getting a cluster of 3 double crochets. When we get over to a corner, it's 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and just keep going around the whole thing. So this teal color is going to be my final round, and when I get all the way to the end, I'm gonna stop because I want to join my final round completely seamlessly. And to do that, I am going to do an invisible join. After my last cluster of 3 double crochets, I'm gonna pull up my loop, trim my thread, and give myself a pretty good tail. And I'm going to slide this tail onto my needle. So here you'll see this is my chain 2 space. We are not gonna go in the chain 2 space. We are actually gonna go in the top of the first double crochet here. We're gonna slide the needle through the top of both loops like this and pull this yarn through. Then we're gonna come over. This is the top of the last double crochet stitch that I made in my third and final cluster for my round. And we are gonna go through the front, but only through the back loop of this stitch. We're gonna pull through, and you'll see here that from the top, every single one of my stitches now looks exactly the same. I'm gonna weave in my work and trim my tail. And right here, where I'm pointing with the needle, is where I did that invisible join. And it looks completely seamless, exactly the same as every single one of my other stitches. And that's it, my granny square is complete. Make 1, make 2, make a whole stack. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.